This is something that Powell has been bracing for since literally hours after Trump was reelected in November, and it's something that the president did not rule out today.
Oh, he'll leave. If I ask him to, he'll be out of there.
Some of the president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
If I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast, believe me.
Can you follow up on, do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
No.
Pretty straightforward. Our panel joins us now. CNN legal analyst Elliot Williams, publisher and editor-in-chief of the Cook Political Report, Amy Walter, Democratic strategist, former finance chair for the Harris 2024 presidential campaign, Rufus Gifford, and CNN political commentator, Republican strategist, Brad Todd. And we also have with us today Maggie Haberman of the New York Times. She is also a CNN political analyst. Maggie, I want to start with you. I'm very grateful to have you join the show. The Wall Street Journal is just out reporting that we're going to attribute the reporting to them here at CNN. We don't have it independently ourselves. But he said the Journal reports that Trump has spoken with Kevin Warsh, he's a former Fed governor, about potentially firing Powell and then before his term ends, and then possibly selecting Warsh to be his replacement. The reporting says Warsh has advised against firing Powell, argued he should let the Fed chair complete his term without interference. He, of course, has about a year left on it. I realize, obviously, you're reporting maybe in a different place on this, but I'm hoping you can kind of help us understand what has happened between Donald Trump and Jerome Powell that is driving all of this.
Jerome Powell is not doing what Donald Trump wants, which is to lower rates. Trump is watching rates get cut elsewhere, and so Trump is doing what Trump does, which is engage in a pressure campaign publicly. This is going to test the limits of what Trump is able to do. Now, Casey, the people that I have spoken to who are in touch with President Trump about this and are having conversations with him about it say he is not imminently going to try to push out Jerome Powell, bearing in mind that this is Donald Trump and things could change day to day. They are well aware in the White House that the markets are struggling, and they are well aware of what the last 2 weeks have looked like for this administration. So while Trump is frustrated and is going to say this publicly, there is an effort to try to keep him from doing this. And just again to note, Casey, yes, I'm sure he has had some kind of a conversation like that with Kevin Warsh. I'm sure Kevin Warsh advised him, as the Journal is reporting, but I do not believe Donald Trump is looking to do this today. He has been talking about firing the Fed chair going back to his first term. It's nothing new.
Right, which is why, of course, Powell felt like he had to come out and say that. I mean, does Trump feel personally betrayed by Powell? I mean, he was asked in the Oval today, did he regret appointing him in the first place? Does he?
Yes, in the way that he ends up regretting appointing everybody who he appoints who doesn't do exactly what he wants. And when he looks across the government, he doesn't believe that there should be pockets of independence, especially when it's people who he has appointed. But again, there are Supreme Court cases that are ongoing right now related to independent agencies and what the limits of presidential power are. And the White House is mindful of that. And so while Trump may be personally disappointed, and he made very clear in the Oval Office that he is, I think that this is going to be something of a line that he will be cautious about crossing. But again, given how unrestrained Trump has been in this term so far, I don't want to suggest that something is not going to happen, but I don't think it is going to happen anytime soon.
Really interesting. Amy Walter, what are the politics of this here? Because, I mean, clearly they got spooked in the White House by especially the bond market, and it's one of the few times we've seen Trump pull back. And his, the fact that the truth this morning didn't actually fire Powell outright may be part of that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just wrote about it today. If you look at for the entirety of Trump 1.0, the one thing he always had going for him, even when his overall approval ratings were very low, was that he got higher approval ratings on the economy. It was that great sort of buoying effect, and that where you'd hear over and over from voters, I don't really like his style, I don't like how reckless he is, but he knows what he's doing on the economy. He's that guy from he knows how to do this.
Yeah.
For the first time ever now, we are seeing his approval ratings on the economy match his overall approval ratings, in that they're both equally underwater. What people are frustrated about when you look at what independents are saying right now in polls is they're willing to give him maybe a little time on this tariff thing. They're not willing to say right now, this is terrible, it's a disaster. They don't like that prices aren't coming down. But what they don't like is the way in which he's going at it. Firing Powell is not going to make those folks suddenly feel less anxious.
Yeah, Brad Todd, for our viewers who don't know, I mean, you see reams of political data. You do a lot of work to try to get Republicans elected. Does it line up with what Amy's saying?
Yes. Voters still give him incredibly high marks on immigration. And the Republican voters and independents who voted for him give him high marks on trade. They're willing to give him some slack and let it work. Which, by the way, that's what Jerome Powell said. You know, the bites that were taken out of that Economic Club of Chicago speech yesterday didn't include what I thought was the key part. At the very end, he said, you know, we don't know exactly what the tariffs are going to be, how long they're going to last, and how they're going to work. And we're watching and waiting. And so Donald Trump now is on the clock. He needs to start making deals.
Rufus Gifford, you spend an awful lot of time talking to people who have been very influenced by the markets, who have a lot of money in the markets, who run and work with businesses. A lot of these people, let's be candid, were okay with Donald Trump getting elected. They remembered what it was like under Trump 1. It seems like there may have been some change of heart. I'm curious what you're hearing from the communities you talk to every day.
Look, what we're hearing is chaos, and people don't like chaos. Investors don't like chaos, CEOs don't like chaos, and individual Americans don't like chaos. And that's what we're seeing here. I think a couple of things on this, Casey. One, what Chairman Powell said yesterday in Chicago, which Trump responded to this morning, is something that virtually every economist out there has said, which is that tariffs are inflationary. And I think everyone has agreed on that, in essence, including his Treasury Secretary before he went full MAGA. And I think what you're seeing, the reason why Donald Trump is not going to fire Jerome Powell immediately is because the markets will tank, and I think he's afraid of that.
Let me go to Elliot Williams on this, too, because, Elliot, the other piece of this is that this was considered under Trump 1, and to the point where Jerome Powell went and asked about, what would happen in this case, and he was told that he would have to pay for his own legal defense out of his own pocket. And it was reported he said he would do that with every last nickel. Right. How can you help us understand
The president can try to fire Jerome Powell. Maybe he will. Now, the rules say that a president can remove a Fed chair for cause. Now, that's things like inefficiency, neglect, or malfeasance. Now, what do those terms mean? Literally, he has to show up drunk to work to get fired. I mean, or intentionally try to tank global markets. That's what courts and Congress have meant when we talk about things like inefficiency, neglect, and malfeasance. Now, as has been sort of said by Maggie and Rufus and Brad, certainly Donald Trump has tried to exert more control over independent agencies. And in fact, the Supreme Court right now is considering the very question of, should we relax the rules on the president being able to remove the heads of independent agencies? Maybe the Fed will be one. This is a legal fight brewing if it does happen.
Yeah. Maggie Haberman, as we sort of consider this, and Rufus used the word authoritarian, one of the big themes, and I know you wrote about this a few days ago for the New York Times, is one of retribution, right? And in your story, which was actually focused on Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, and real estate, you noted that during the first several months of his second term, Trump has mostly avoided using the justice system to target his enemies, but last week, you said he signed presidential memos singling out officials who opposed him during his first term, directing his agencies to scrutinize their actions. The U.S. Attorney in New Jersey said she was going to open an investigation into that state's governor. And then I want to play for you. This is something that Lisa Murkowski, the senator from Alaska, said. It actually had happened a few days ago, but the video has just been circulating today. I want to play it for you, and we'll talk about it. Take a look.
We are all afraid. Okay. Sworn statement. I'm oftentimes very anxious myself about using my voice because retaliation is real, and that's not right.
That quote she used, Maggie, "We are all afraid." Is that fear justified?
Look, she's saying something that you have heard senators say over time privately and most vocally, frankly, Casey, around the January 6th Senate impeachment trial of Donald Trump. I would say that Congress and the Senate, the House and the Senate, are co-equal branches of the government, and they represent constituents. And if they have concerns, what would seem to be keeping them from speaking out is, maybe it's personal fears, but in a lot of cases, it's fears of them losing their jobs, and that's sort of a different issue than fear of personal safety or something else.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely taken. I guess when I was asking, is it justified? It's just you noted in your story that there seems to have been this evolution for Trump himself. Right, that there has been this change. I think my question is there really a marked difference in his behavior here? And do you think that you see a willingness on his part to go after people in a new way?
Oh, sure. Look, I mean, this was Jonathan Swan and Mike Schmidt and Charlie Savage and I wrote about this. I don't think there's been an evolution in terms of what Trump would like to use the levers of government for. I think there has been an evolution in terms of how he is using the levers of government and how streamlined and centralized it is within the White House. So, instead of using his Twitter feed or having phone calls with Jeff Sessions, as we saw in 2017, you had in the Oval Office last week Donald Trump signing presidential memoranda targeting two individuals who had worked in the first Trump administration, one of whom because he disagreed that the election was stolen and spoke openly about that. And that is a line crossed that we had not seen before. And what that portends for the future, we shall see.